something happened today. Maybe it was small. Maybe it wasn't even that big of a deal to anyone else in the room. But something landed wrong, and now you're here. Not crying, not yelling, just gone. Somewhere behind your own eyes, door closed, lights off. And when someone asks if you're okay, the answer that comes out isn't even a lie, exactly. It's just the only word your body could find. Fine. I'm fine. And the worst part isn't the hurt. The worst part is watching them accept that answer and walk away, because part of you wanted them to push. And part of you is relieved they didn't, and you don't fully understand either half of that. That's where we're starting today. Not with a definition, not with a list, with that exact feeling. The one you've carried so many times, you've stopped noticing the weight. Here's the thing nobody ever gets right about people who go quiet when they're hurt. Everyone on the outside calls it shutting down. They call it the silent treatment. They call it passive, aggressive, emotionally immature, difficult. And you've heard all of those words directed at you, maybe so many times that some part of you started to believe them. But here's what's actually happening inside your body in that moment. Your nervous system isn't punishing anyone. It's surviving. And there's a very specific, very measurable reason why. When emotional pain hits a certain intensity, the brain does something researchers have documented for decades, but almost nobody explains in plain language. The prefrontal cortex, that's the part responsible for forming words, constructing sentences, choosing how to respond, it goes offline. Not metaphorically, literally. The neural pathways between your emotional centers and your language centers get flooded and temporarily disconnected. Scientists call it Broca's area suppression during emotional flooding. What that means in real life is this. When someone is standing in front of you saying, just talk to me, just tell me what's wrong, and nothing is coming out, that isn't stubbornness. That isn't cruelty. Your brain has physically made language harder to access because it's doing something it considers more urgent, keeping you from falling apart. You're not shutting people out, you're holding yourself together, and those are not the same thing. Not even close. But this didn't start today, and it didn't start with this relationship, or this argument, or this particular person who hurt you. This started much earlier, and that's the part that matters most. Picture this, you're 7 years old, maybe 8, something happened. Someone at school said something, or a parent snapped, or you got in trouble for something you didn't fully understand, and you cried. You went to someone and you cried, and what came back wasn't what you needed. Maybe it was stop being so dramatic. Maybe it was you're too sensitive. Maybe it was nothing at all, just a blank look and someone changing the subject. Or worse, your tears were used against you later. As evidence of weakness, as something to mock. You were so small, and your nervous system was paying close attention. Psychologist Bowlby spent his career studying exactly this moment, the moment a child learns what happens when they show pain. His research showed that when early caregivers consistently respond to a child's hurt with dismissal, irritation, or silence, the child doesn't just stop expressing pain, they stop trusting that pain is worth expressing. They build what Bowlby called an avoidant attachment pattern, a kind of internal rule that says vulnerability leads to loss. And the safest way to keep people close is to never let them see you breaking. You didn't decide to become someone who goes quiet. You were taught that going quiet was the only way to stay safe. And here's something worth sitting with for a moment. That lesson was logical. In the environment where you learned it, silence probably did protect you. It kept the peace. It kept people from leaving. It kept you from being made smaller in a moment when you were already fragile. Your silence was never weakness. It was the smartest strategy a hurting child could build with what they had. The problem is you're not 7 anymore. And the strategy outlasted the situation it was designed for. There's a term in psychology called the window of tolerance, developed by researcher Dr. Dan Siegel at UCLA. It describes the emotional bandwidth inside which a person can actually function, communicate, and connect. When something pushes you outside that window, when pain floods the system, genuine communication becomes neurologically impossible. Not difficult. Impossible. And people who learned early to suppress their hurt tend to have a narrower window than most, because their nervous system has been on guard for so long it takes less to overwhelm it. So when you go quiet, your system isn't choosing silence over words. It's outside the window entirely. It's doing the only thing it knows how to do when the pain gets too big. It's shutting down non-essential systems and running on emergency power. The lights are on, but the building is locked. And no amount of knocking on the door from the outside is going to change that. In fact, and this is the part that's genuinely hard to hear, the more someone pushes for an answer in that moment, the deeper the freeze goes. Every demand to speak right now confirms the oldest belief your nervous system carries, that your pain is a burden, that you don't get to process on your own timeline, that the way you experience hurt is wrong, and if that's been confirmed enough times, you stop coming back at all. If you've ever needed someone to finally understand that about you, that this is what's actually happening, that's exactly why this channel exists. Subscribe. Every week we go this deep into the stuff that usually goes unsaid. Now here's the part that almost nobody talks about. What's actually happening inside the silence. Because from the outside, you look still, closed off. Maybe even cold. But inside that quiet, your brain is running at a higher intensity than most people experience even in their loudest arguments. Research on the brain's default mode network, the system responsible for self-reflection and internal processing, shows that people who go quiet under emotional stress often have significantly elevated activity in exactly these regions. You're not checked out. You're stress testing every angle of what just happened. You're asking yourself, did I contribute to this? Have I felt this before? What does this mean for us? What do I actually need? What happens if I get it wrong? You're doing in silence what most people do out loud. The difference is you refuse to say it until you know you mean it. A study from the University of Texas by researcher James Pennebaker found that people who engage in deep internal processing of emotional events before expressing them tend to form more accurate and nuanced understandings of what they actually feel. You're not avoiding the problem. You're refusing to react to it before you understand it. And in a world where people say everything immediately and mean maybe half of it, that level of emotional precision is genuinely rare. When your words finally come, and they do come, when you're ready, they've been turned over 100 times. Checked for accuracy. Checked for fairness. You don't weaponize pain. You don't throw accusations just to watch them land. When you say something hurt you, it really did. When you say you love someone, it's been tested against your worst moments and survived. Your words cost you something before you give them, and that makes them worth more than most people will ever understand about you. This is the stuff we unpack every week. The parts of yourself that the world misread for years. If that's why you're here, subscribe. There's a lot more coming, but here's what I want to leave you with. You have been called cold. You have been called difficult. You have been told you're too much in your head, too hard to reach, too closed off to be loved the way you deserve. And some part of you, the part that was 7 years old and learned silence was the price of safety, believed it. So let me be clear about something. You're not cold. Cold people don't feel what you feel. Cold people don't carry conversations for days afterward, turning over every word, wondering if you said too much or not enough, or whether the person on the other end of the silence is okay. Cold people don't protect others from the worst of what lives at the bottom of them. Cold people don't love the way you love, carefully, slowly, completely, only once you're sure it's safe. What you are is someone whose nervous system learned to protect the heart before the heart had a chance to defend itself, and that system has been running ever since. Not because something is broken in you, because something was broken around you, a long time ago, and you were resourceful enough to survive it. The silence was never the problem. It was the answer your body found when no one taught you a better one. And maybe, not today, maybe not soon, but maybe one day you'll be somewhere safe enough that you won't need it quite as much. Not because the silence was wrong, but because you finally found someone patient enough to wait for you to come back. And the coming back got easier, and then easier still. That's not fixing yourself. That's what healing actually looks like.